Welcome to Newsmakers. Newsmakers is our daily public affairs program, and today this is going to be a really fun show. Today I am being joined by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. How are you today, President? Mr. President?
Very good. It's an honor to be here today with you, sir.
Well, thanks for coming in. You obviously have had to travel a long distance.
Yes, I just recently returned from Yalta in Russia, where I just met with Prime Minister Churchill and Premier Stalin to plan our final strategy for the defeat of Nazi Germany and eventually that of Imperial Japan.
Well, you could probably teach us a thing or two about what we have going on in today's world.
Well, yes, hopefully we'll be able to build a better world out of the ruins of this old world. And that's why I'm looking forward to the conference in April of this year of 1945 at San Francisco, where we're going to be planning the United Nations Organization.
Now, you were just with Winston Churchill. Does he light those cigars?
Apparently he does.
Yes?
And a good drink, too.
And a good stiff drink.
Yes.
Now, you were getting ready to start the United Nations. I'm a Rotarian. I understand the Rotary is going to be there.
Yes, they are, and many delegates from nearly 50 nations will be there.
And what do you think this United Nations is going to be able to accomplish for us?
Well, you know, we've seen this great destruction in Europe and in the Pacific and in Asia as a result of the Second World War. And I think back to the last war, the First World War. And I'm just sorry we didn't listen to the advice of President Woodrow Wilson and join the League of Nations, because if we had joined it and had taken an active role, we might have been able to prevent a Second World War. And I'm afraid that any similar conflict in the future will destroy civilization as we know it.
And this United Nations is going to be different from the League of Nations in what way?
Well, we hope to make it stronger. We have a Security Council where the five powers, the United States, Britain, the Soviet Union, and France and China, will have a say, and we'll be able to perhaps take military action if necessary to prevent any future conflicts or perhaps resolve any future conflicts.
Not let the Nazis come back again.
Exactly. And that is why we plan to defeat Nazi Germany and to bring its leaders to justice at the end of this war.
And how's the war looking?
Looking very well. A matter of fact, I just received a communique from General Eisenhower's headquarters. Our forces are advancing into Germany and have reached the Elbe River. They're now 50 miles from Berlin, about 80 miles from the nearest units of the Soviet Army, the Red Army. And according to the Chief of Staff of the United States Army, General Marshall, that the war in Europe might be over perhaps by this summer or even this spring.
Wow, that's quick. We came across Europe very, very quickly.
Yes, but it's taken many, many lives and taken many years to reach where we are today. However, I'm very concerned about the war in the Pacific. It appears that while we are gaining against Japan, our forces are already gaining on the island of Okinawa, and our bombers are daily bombing Japanese cities. According to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they tell me that the war against Japan may not end until next year. And they tell me it may require a direct Allied invasion of the Japanese home islands. And they tell me that such an invasion could result in hundreds of thousands of American lives, not to mention many, many more Japanese lives. However, we may be able to end the war sooner against Japan, something which, between you and me, we're working on a secret project out in Los Alamos, New Mexico, our Manhattan Project. And I understand that if it is completed by this summer, we may have the means to defeat Japan even faster and bring it to its knees faster than we expect.
Could you imagine this? This is Peter Small. Peter Small is an educator. What you just got was a very good education in what it was like in 1942?
45.
This was 45.
Yes, I just returned from Yalta. I'm going to Warm Springs in Georgia to recuperate from that exhausting trip that I had in Yalta. You know, I also You might recall when I spoke to the Congress, of course, it was the first time that I spoke to them seated. You may know I was struck by polio in 1921, and any time I made a public appearance, I always had a cane in one hand, and I was supported by my son James with his arm. Of course, he, like my other sons, is presently serving in the armed forces of the United States. And when I always stood, I had my braces on, and I held on to the speaker's dais, but I was so exhausted from that trip that it was the first time that I ever made a speech in public, seated in my wheelchair, and talked about my paralysis. Well, you remember, when I became president more than 12 years ago, our nation was crippled by a Great Depression. And, I mean, just think what it would have done for national morale to have a crippled nation led by a crippled man.
That would not be good.
No. So anytime I appeared in public, I would either be seated in an open touring car, or I would be holding a cane in one hand and be supported by my son James in the other. And it was also understood between the press and the Secret Service that I was never to be photographed in a wheelchair or being helped around.
And the press really did that for you.
Oh, yes.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back after these messages.